Hey guys, it's Amelie and welcome back to Is This Legit? A series where we debunk viral videos on YouTube and walk you through the ways that you can fact check on your own. And today we're going to be looking at a video that makes some pretty bold claims, including that the US Capitol was raided on February 2nd. Take a look.
So here we have just a parade of emergency vehicles that showed up in front of the Capitol the moment Nancy hit the gavel. As soon as that screen went blank, these guys were on their way. What does that tell you? They're targeting somebody in that room for sure. Something or someone in that room has a problem. Whether they're here to administrate help or administrate law, we will never know because the media won't tell us, because the media is controlled by the CCP. Why? Because they took that $2.5 billion bribe.
As you just saw, the video states that emergency vehicles swarmed the Capitol and claims that this was because of corrupt politicians accepting bribes of $2.5 billion from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, this video racked up more than 250,000 views, but is this legit? When it comes to fact-checking, you always want to be looking for evidence. Basically, any sort of proof, like a link to an article or a study that backs up their claim. Bottom line is, don't just take someone's word for it. And in this video, the YouTuber, Red Stepstacker, doesn't mention any politicians in particular, or mention where this information might have come from. We also don't have any information to go off of in the description, so really aside from this footage of flashing lights outside the Capitol, they have offered us zero evidence to support the claim that the building is being raided. Next step, I'm just going to try and do a quick Google search to find out what may have been happening at the Capitol on February 2nd. And looking through the results, there are a lot of articles that mention Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. The results also brought up a fact check from PolitiFact with the headline, "No, the Capitol wasn't raided on February 2nd. So that seems like a good place to start. PolitiFact fact-checked the same video, and according to their reporting, those emergency vehicles seen in the video was actually a motorcade bringing the remains of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick to lie in honor at the Capitol Rotunda. It was Officer Sicknick who died from injuries sustained during the January 6th storming of the US Capitol. Turning back to the YouTube video really quickly, some of the comments on the video point out that this was footage of Sicknick being brought to lie in honor. However, some claim that this was actually further proof that there is a Capitol raid, with many stating that memorial services are hardly ever held at night. So let's turn back to our original search results and try to focus on the timeline of the events. The first thing I found was this footage from C-SPAN. At the top of the page it says, again, that on February 2nd, the urn carrying the remains of Officer Brian Sicknick arrived at the US Capitol to lie in honor. Here's a short clip. As you saw, this did happen in the evening. But I also found this article from the Washington Post that has a more detailed timeline. According to the article, Sicknick's remains arrived in the Capitol at around 9:30 p.m. on February 2nd. Some lawmakers escorted Sicknick's remains into the Capitol, and the President and First Lady arrived shortly after 10 p.m. to pay their respects. The following morning, after a congressional ceremony in the Rotunda, Sicknick's remains were brought to Arlington National Cemetery. I also found this article from NPR, which also states that Sicknick's remains were brought to the Rotunda to lie in honor the evening of February 2nd, including several photos of this happening. And according to the article, lying in honor is a term reserved for those who were not government or military officials, and only 4 people have previously been given the distinction of lying in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. So just to recap, those emergency vehicles seen in the YouTube video were bringing the remains of Officer Sicknick to the Capitol, and they were not there to raid the building and arrest corrupt politicians. Still, there are several claims in this video, including that members of our government have accepted $2.5 billion bribes from China. And at one point, the video states that there has been quite a few arrests of congressmen and senators at the Capitol. To see if there was any truth to these claims, I did a series of keyword searches. I typed both congressmen being arrested at Capitol and senators being arrested at Capitol, and I couldn't find any reporting of this happening. I also did a series of keyword searches to try to find out more about the supposed $2.5 billion bribes. Again, I couldn't find any relevant results. Now, to me, if this were true, these would be major news stories that would likely be heavily reported on. Like, if politicians were being arrested and escorted out of the Capitol, people would be talking about it. However, in the video, they conveniently state that there won't be any reporting on this because the media is also controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and took the same $2.5 billion bribe, which makes me wonder, well then, where did they get their information from? But just to be clear, there is no way a news organizations would fail to report a raid at the Capitol, because it would be one of the most significant news events in modern times. Passing on a story like that would be a major loss of credibility. Speaking of credibility, there's lots of ways to make sure what you're looking at is a legit news source. For one, credible news organizations will list their editorial standards. You can find ours in the description below. If you come across a news website that has zero publishing standards or policies, leave. That's a major red flag. Credible organizations will also be transparent about who is funding projects and state their editorial independence. For example, PolitiFact has a full page about who pays for PolitiFact. Snopes has a disclosure policy. This information is out there if you're willing to take the time to look for it. Lastly, credible organizations will have corrections policies. You definitely want to be getting your news from places that admit when they're wrong. But as for this video, we'll have to rate it as not legit. There is simply no evidence to support the claims that the Capitol was raided on February 2nd or that the government officials have been accepting billion-dollar bribes. And as we saw, there's plenty of photo and video evidence from the night of February 2nd that shows Officer Sicknick's remains being brought to the Capitol Rotunda. Remember, if you're ever unsure about if something is legit or not, a really good place to start is just by searching up keywords on Google. I will put all the links to the posts mentioned in the video in the description below, and if you see any possible misinformation and want us to check it out, send it our way. Bye guys!
Don't compromise, be media